Hello and welcome to Sojourners Cove once again. I'm back after a long hiatus. Today I'm going to speak about the 7 effective tips to bring down your mental chatter. But before that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do, because I'll keep bringing such relevant mental health topic videos on and off. Also, for those who are following Sojourners Cove only on YouTube and not on other related social sites, you may still not be aware that we at Sojourners Cove bring out a quarterly mental health magazine called Carrot Seeds. We have so far brought out 2 issues of it, and I will be providing the free download link to both the issues in the description box below. So just click and you will have your free copy of both the issues. So please read, pass it on to as many. It's absolutely free, and hope you like it. I will also be providing the mail ID of Sojourners Cove, and you can always anytime mail us with any of your feedback, suggestion, questions, any kind of assistance that you need with regards to mental health or any other practical issues related to the mind, and we are always there. I am personally also there to reply to each of your mails. So coming to the topic of 7 effective tips to bring down the mental chatter. Now, I don't think that anyone even needs to define what this mental chatter is or explain what this mental chatter is. Most of us, if not all of us, are thoroughly aware of what this mental chatter means. It's the incessant, constant, non-stop conversations that goes on inside our mind. Sometimes with our permission, most often without our permission, and for some it's soft, for some of us it's moderate, for some of us it's really a loud conversation going on all the time inside of our heads. Excuse me. So all of us are quite familiar with the whole concept of mental chatter, and most often than not it kind of hinders a lot of productivity, hinders our mental peace, our mental clarity. And more often than not, if we do not learn how to control and keep it tamed, this mental noise, then very soon it spills over or it grows into a huge mental mess, which then requires a lot of external assistance, professional help, and so on and so on. So it's very important to address the mental conversations, the constant habitual mental chatters that so often mildly or moderately or extremely keeps distressing us. So firstly, the first tip, and I'll start with the apparently unpleasant words to the more fun tips. The first tip being the word training. Now, I know many of us, including me at one point of time, had, and some of us still have, a severe allergy to the word training. Like, training is no good, training is a bad word, training is boring, it just means slogging, it just means teeth grinding, hard work and rigorous, discipline. No, it need not be. Training in the beginning might feel a bit unfamiliar and the mind is not habituated to, but it's almost like when you first hit the gym to shape up your body, when you first start processing the understanding of training the mind, it may seem a bit awkward and seem a bit unpleasant, but slowly you start developing a taste for it, which I too did, in spite of my initial years severe resistance towards anything related to the word training, closely related to. But I have slowly learned to love the concept of training the mind. So tip number 1, we have to approach the whole issue of constant mental chatter with an attitude of training. Having done that, the second point is, when you need to train something, you need to give it time. If we are trying to train our body and keep it in shape, we go to the gym, spend 2,000, 3,000 or even like huge amount of money every month to keep our bodies in shape through gym training. So why not spend almost no money and a little amount of time, far less amount of time than the everyday 2 or 3 hours you spend at gym, to also kind of metaphoric gym train the mind, to keep the mind in shape, keep the mind healthy. So the time allocation is the second tip. Make time to attend to your mind. Tip number 2. We live in such a fast-paced world that every day morning we wake up, we immediately start rushing off to attend our daily chores, we rush off to work, we rush off to our domestic responsibilities, or to school, or to college, and so on and so on. And we rush through the day, we rush through the evening, we crash and go to sleep in the night, and then next day the same process continues, while this whole mental chatter is in the background continuing, until a point comes when it just completely implodes, and then we realize that because we didn't make time for ourselves and our own mind, wanting to give time to whatever our responsibilities were, now there has come a time when we ourselves have become incapacitated to even attend to the externals. Like, yes, our home needs our time, our domestic chores needs our attention, our children, our spouse, our colleagues, our boss, our friends, society need our time, need our attention. But unless I am taking care of myself first, and unless I am fit and I am in a position to give that attention to others, I cannot give them. And I can give it only when I first give that attention to myself, to keep my body and mind healthy. Goes without saying. So to develop this discipline of maybe 10 minutes in the morning after you wake up, before or after breakfast, 5 minutes if it's difficult to manage time somewhere in between the rush of the day, maybe in the lunchtime, in the afternoon, any time during the household works in the afternoon, and a little more time during the bedtime, maybe 15-20 minutes. So basically just a short package of 40 minutes a day, broken up into 2 or 3 chunks, smaller chunks of time, which you reserve only and only for yourself. That time nobody else has a right on, neither your boss, nor your work, nor your husband, nor your wife, nor your children, nor your friends, no other work, definitely not other social sites and society and so on. That is the time you spend only with yourself. Tip number 3, once you've allocated that time for yourself, what do you do with that time? You go back and listen, sit down with your mind, give it the attention that it's wanting. This mind, this mental chatter is what is like a child wanting your attention. If any of us have even briefly tried listening to what's going on with all this mental noise and white noise and background conversations going on inside us, must have seen that more often than not, all these mental conversations and chatters and noises are either about some memories that are bothering us, some fears or hurt that we have inside us, some unpleasant situation from the past, or the lack of in the present, or the fear of the future, the proverbial "oh if I only had," which is regrets, or "oh what if," which is the proverbial catastrophizing the future. Depression or anxiety, it's again all related to the constant chatter about the past and the future, and of course a complete discomfort in the present. So this mental chatter is almost like this child who is asking for your attention. And the first important thing is to sit down with the child. Any of us who has a child or children knows that telling a child, "shut up, I don't have time for you, you're being a botheration," simply leads to the child whining and even more throwing even louder a fit. So the first and foremost thing is to sit down with the child and say, "Hey, I'm here to listen to you. What's going on? Tell me." Now when you do that, you suddenly realize that a range of topic, a range of conversation opens up, and more often than not, things like what had happened in the past, what's going to go wrong in the future, things we feel unpleasant about ourselves. "Oh, I'm like this, oh, I'm like that, I don't feel good about myself," or about the other, "I don't feel okay with this person doing this to me, I don't feel the situation doing this to me." And basically it all boils down to fears, unpleasant emotions, memories, hurts, anxiety, what ifs. And we need to realize the fourth step is then attend to it with non-judgmental, loving acceptance. A child has an issue. You cannot just slap the child and say, I don't want to listen to it, or you're wrong in even feeling that way. The common terminology for this whole mental chatter, besides the child whining, is also the monkey mind. So the monkey mind is always going to go on jumping from this place to that place, and we need to understand that this monkey mind, or the what I call the habitual mind, and I am categorically leaving out certain other commonly used terminologies equally correct, like the ego mind or the subconscious, conscious, superconscious. I am leaving those terminologies out just for this video and for certain valid reasons, and I am just using the simplest term, easy for all of us to understand: the habitual mind. The habitual mind is basically habituated right from the day it was born in this, as us in this body, and throughout our upbringings, throughout our past events, throughout the things that were told to us, taught to us, things that we experienced, to get into a pattern of constantly calculating and figuring out what's right, what's wrong, what's going to go wrong, what's going to go right. And we need to understand that it is not our enemy. This habitual mind is not our enemy at the origin. It is simply trying to protect us from what it thinks is a survival threat, what it thinks is painful for us and itself. And it's only, the habitual mind is only and only trying to protect us from perceived threats. But of course, what it doesn't realize, because of the conditioning and the habitual pattern, is that the process it's applying is wrong. This whole controlling is basically trying to control you from threat towards your survival. So it's not an enemy, though the action or the process tends to become a very hostile enemy kind of a force, like kind of really disrupting our mental peace and all. But the intention of the habitual mind is never that. So there's no point judging it, approaching it with a friendliness and saying, hey, I understand you're trying to protect me. Now let's sit down and hear what you have to say. Once you have already heard that, that loving acceptance and non-judgment has to be there, that okay, now can I tell you how to feel relaxed. Fifth point, which now comes up, is one of the commonly used CBT techniques called ABC: the activating event, the belief system, and the consequences. Now that's normally the basic infrastructure upon which the habitual mind operates. There is an activating event, which we call trigger or past memory, and it immediately, the habitual mind puts it into a pattern and says, oh, that is good and that is bad, creates the B, that is the belief system around it, and C is the consequences. It starts calculating the consequences, which can also be an equally valid other C, which is catastrophizing. And then this entire gamut of protecting you from this whole perceived threat goes on. So we need to understand that if we are trying to dislodge this catastrophizing consequences, we need to go a step behind and look at the belief of why is the mind feeling threatened or unpleasant or hurt, and then go one step further behind and look at the activating event, or the and this is not about going back to the root event or going back and finding the memory. It's just going back to the root premise, the logical cognitive premise of what's bothering, what's boiling down to this whole bothersome consequences. I'm not getting too much into the ABC method. You will find ample even professional write-ups on the CBT technique or technique of ABC. You can always, of course, get professional help if you need ABC in a more professional manner. So that's the fifth step, to actually look at what is the catastrophizing consequence the mind is trying to protect you against, what is the belief behind it, and what is the premise of that belief behind it. That's fifth. So once we do that, and we do that on a regular basis, slowly over the months and weeks and years, the mind starts imbibing and internalizing a new process of thinking that, okay, after all, it might not be that threatening, and I can calm down, I can relax and take a little nap for a while, or just be quiet for a while. That's point 5. Coming to point 6, journaling is a very, very important and fun way of training. So that's why I was saying training need not always be uh, uh, journaling really, really helps. Like morning when you're waking up and you're talking to your mind, or evening when you're going to bed and you're uh, spending that 15-20 minutes, just to have a notebook and to keep, jotting down, journaling what your thoughts were, what your feelings were, which always remains as a record for you to later go back and see how much of progress you have done when you have, over the months and years, trained your mind. And it's such a rewarding experience to actually go back to your old journals and look at, oh, I felt such messed up inside my mind then, and now I have so much of calm. That's the other reward. But basically, when you are actually going through the journaling, you're jotting down, you're writing down, and in this process you're catharsizing, you're venting, you're letting all these confusing, I really don't know what am I thinking, thought processes onto the paper, which then takes a shape, which forms into a structure, and then the mind is like, okay, now I know what I'm thinking, you also know what the mind is thinking. And so journaling really, really helps. That's point number 6, getting into a fun and healthy habit of daily journaling. Point number 7, and I think I botched up the 5, 6, 7. I think this is the point 6. 6 is when you are journaling these things down, and when you're jotting down these what ifs and what went wrong, taking proactive actions, either with something related to the past that needs your attention, or something related to the future which the mind is catastrophizing. Let me explain briefly what I am trying to say. If you feel that there is a certain incident in the past that's really bothering you, and it will not just go away simply by your listening, then you need to sit and address it. You need to either address the emotions around it, need to address the whole situation, maybe even talk it out with people concerned or involved in that situation. Many a times when we are having really strong emotional triggers from the past, or really strong future anxiety with the future, that's the time even the professional help comes into the picture, and then we open ourselves up to going and talking to a therapist or a professional. But taking what hi last time the recording, I don't know how, stopped, and I didn't even realize, and I went about my day, and now I'm back after quite a few hours to complete the recording. So in case you're suddenly noticing a weird difference in lighting conditions before and after, and the change in the wardrobe, just blame it on the technical glitch. So I'll continue from where I had left off. The 6th point being taking proactive actions and making certain proactive changes with regards to anything that's remaining as a bothersome thing from the past, or something that is constantly bothering you about the future, to look into, take stock, and find out if at all there is any practical, emotional, relational, or situational changes that needs to be addressed from the past or concerning the future, and taking whatever action, taking whatever decision and steps towards resolution of them, which of course includes talking to people involved in the situations that are concerning you, or taking professional help and talking to professionals, a therapist or a counselor, to find out how you can face these bothersome issues from the past, or how you can help your mind not to fret so much about concerning perception of future. So yes, when we also address these issues proactively, the mind again feels much more comfortable to an extent that these are being addressed, and it becomes easier to allow the mind to calm down by saying, I have done my best and I have been taking proactive action, so just chill and lose the grip of that control over so much of things going on in your mind. That really helps. Coming to point number 7, and last but not the least, this one tip has been a life transforming tip for me as far as calming down my mental chatters and softening the loud noises of my mind is concerned, and that's the practice of mindfulness. Now, I know by now most of us have heard that famous word mindfulness, and I'm also aware that the word at times generates a lot of confusion as to what is mindfulness. Is it a particular spiritual practice? Is it a kind of meditation? Do you have to be a Zen or a Buddhist or following or believing in certain metaphysical or spiritual practices to practice the discipline of mindfulness? No. Mindfulness, regardless of what the origin, what the philosophy and stuff, simply means being mindful of your mind, being mindful of the exact present moment where you are at whatever situation. And that doesn't require any kind of additional metaphysical, spiritual and theological explanations or blah blahs to come in, and only then it will work. Mindfulness is simply when there are quite a few steps. When you are aware of your present moment, what's going on inside, what's going on outside, and regardless of what's going on inside, am I being able to focus my attention on my mind and just watch it from a distance. It's the discipline of watching your mind from a distance and letting that chatter flow like a river. You just don't try to control or dam that chatter. You just take a step back after you have done all these 1 2 3 4 5 6 steps. You just take a step back and you just let the mind continue its chatter, not exactly ignoring, but you're just staying one step behind and letting the entire flow of the mind to carry on. And what happens is, after a point, the mind, without finding a suitable engaging audience in you, it just kind of, let's say, gets bored, or finding no really dramatic or melodramatic response, slowly over the days and weeks and months of practice tends to calm down. The other facet of mindfulness is also watching your breath. I have had severe issues with panic attacks and severe anxiety and stuff, and watching the breath has been a wonderful help for me. When you're panicking, or when you're having anxiety, or when you're having depression and a lot of pain and rage and whatever the negative emotions are going on inside, sometimes after having done everything, to just calm down, take a pause and just let that flow while you're watching your breath. All you're aware of at that moment of tremendous pain or anxiety or whatever is, you are aware only of your breath, and that's about it. And it just works wonders. There are quite a few resources if any of you are interested. There's a wonderful book by Eckhart Tolle called Power of Now, which was introduced to me by my own therapist, and it has been life-changing. There are various resources by John Kabat Zinn, who also talks about mindfulness, and there are a few practices, very easy habits. I would not like to call them meditation practice. I would not like to term them in that specific terminology of meditation practice or spiritual practice. They are not. When you are eating, you are completely giving attention to the food on your plate. Is no spiritual metaphysical practice. It's as hardcore as here and now, real living out your life. When you're walking, you're completely mindful of just the steps falling on the road, so that your mind doesn't even find your attention to say, oh, but now that though you're walking, see, you left so and so course unattended at home, or oh, what if tomorrow. So focusing our attention completely mindfully at what we are doing at this point of time, in this very moment, completely over the period of time, and even initially and slowly, significantly loosens the grip of mental chatter constantly. Uh, 1 second, my technology is really working weird today. So yes, the last point is mindfulness and the daily practice of mindfulness, and a lifestyle of mindfulness works wonders in tackling uh, this mental chatter, mental white noise, and constant mental conversations that literally at times goes overboard to drive many of us like nuts. So those are the 7 points. The some other mini points which I'll probably cover more extensively about how to declutter your mind also is related to this topic. And just quickly, tips like keeping a notepad handy so that whatever you're trying to keep in your short-term memory, like the course I need to do, the mails I need to shoot, this to-do list and all, when you start shelving them by just jotting down whatever comes to your mind, you are actually clearing out a lot of your brain space, so that your mind doesn't start feeding on them and adding this extra fuel of mental chatter. um, Cutting down social sites, I couldn't ever say enough on that. I am no one to suggest that you completely cut off and completely go away from social sites and all. It has helped me to significantly up to 90% cut down my social sites activities, my net activities. But it need not be that extreme, but definitely to cut down the amount of time and energy and attention we give to social sites, which are epic epic places to see how everybody's talking about the wonderful life they are having, which is of course just a projection, and we all have our problems. And when we look at those social side projections of ideal life, the mind finds more fuel to feel more of self-judgment, more of low self-esteem, competition and comparison, and the gamut of other not so healthy mental thoughts, which keeps adding to the mental chatter, the mental noises. So cutting down social site, or limiting it to a particular amount of time only during the whole day, helps a lot. There are quite a few other tips, and these are actually tips to how to declutter your mind, and I will be covering that in the next video. So for now, these are the short, simple, and completely effective, and I can vouch for myself, it's been 100% effective tips in significantly controlling, calming down the mind, and reducing the mental chatters. So I'll leave you with that for now, and please feel free to write in comments on YouTube, or even to mail in your suggestions, feedbacks, any questions, anything you want me to cover in the upcoming videos, and I would love to hear from you all. And yeah, so that's about it. Take care, have a healthy mind, have a healthy life, and I'll see you all soon again. Bye bye.